Welcome to another EPA's monthly webinar series on small drinking water systems, drinking water and wastewater systems. This month's topic is point of use, point of entry treatment devices for drinking water. A little bit of housekeeping in that a certificate of continuing education contact hours is offered for this webinar. You must register to receive that credit. So you see on the bottom of your screen a link where you can go to and register for this contact hour credit. So for some of the requirements to get that contact hour, you must be registered, as I mentioned. For the live webinar, we don't have the ability right now to give out certificates of completion for the recorded versions of the webinar. So you must listen to it live. You must be online for 60 minutes. So the system tracks that, so we must see that you've been listening in for 60 minutes. And then if you're in a room with others, please let us know how many people are in that room. That will allow us to, first of all, keep track of how many people we're reaching, and it shows the benefits and the good things we're doing with this webinar series, and helps us promote it in the future. And secondly, if the people listening in your room are requiring contact hours, we need to know who they are and that, yes, they are in that room. So that being said, if you've missed the poll and have more than one person in the room with you, please put that in the question box. On the question dialog box on the right corner, you'll see that. Go to the questions, fill in how many people are in your room. That would really help us out a great deal. Okay, so given all that housekeeping duties, we have Craig Patterson, who's our first speaker of the day. He'll talk about household water systems. Craig is an environmental engineer with over 35 years of experience with federal environmental programs and environmental consulting firms. Over the past 13 years, Craig's research emphasis has been on drinking water treatment technologies for small communities, including working with household water systems or point of use, point of entry systems. His research has focused mainly on emerging and innovative water treatment technologies in support of EPA regulatory requirements. This effort has included collaborative field studies on a wide variety of surface and groundwater sources with researchers from the EPA regions, states, local health departments, water utilities, private industry, and also academia. So with that, I will give it to Craig. And one last bookkeeping purpose, if you have a question during Craig's talk, please put it in the questions box right away. It'll help us organize it, and we will answer those questions. After both speakers. So Craig Patterson will talk first, then Cynthia, and then we'll answer questions. But it'll help us organize that. So Craig, I'll give the floor to you.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on household water systems, tailoring treatment alternatives to contaminants in groundwater and distribution systems. If anyone was able to attend our webinar on filtration last March, there may be some overlap on a few of these research studies. As always, I have too much information, so please bear with me. The research studies described in this webinar are designed to provide background on the capabilities and testing protocols of household water systems. In today's presentation, I will quickly go over general background and regulatory implications regarding the use of point of use and point of entry or POU, POE devices. This presentation will focus on the chemical and microbiological removal capabilities of household water systems based on studies conducted at the U.S. EPA Test and Evaluation Facility in Cincinnati, Ohio. Later, Cindy Clevens will provide a regulatory perspective on the use of POU devices in New Hampshire. Point of use or kitchen sink devices are installed at or under the sink or on the end of the faucet and treat only water used for drinking. Point of entry or whole house devices treat all the water entering a building. POU and POE devices typically use one or more of the common water treatment options like filtration, absorption, UV disinfection, reverse osmosis membranes, ion exchange, and or chemical disinfection. Point-of-use devices can provide consumers in homes, businesses, and apartment buildings with clean drinking water with improved taste. They can be designed to remove specific contaminants or inadvertently remove unregulated contaminants from potable water. POU systems can prevent illness and improve public health if properly selected, installed, operated, and maintained. They can protect households from untreated water and treated water that has been contaminated in the distribution system. However, they are designed for clean water sources or tap water and should not be relied on for untreated water or wastewaters except during emergency situations. On slide 10, the Safe Drinking Water Act regulates household or point-of-use devices used to achieve compliance with an MCL. However, POU devices may not be used to achieve compliance with microbial contaminants and are not eligible if contaminants have acute toxicity, significant inhalation exposure, or risk of dermal exposure. POU devices must be owned, controlled, and maintained by the public water system or by a contractor hired by the public water system for compliance with an MCL and must include mechanical warnings or auto shut-off capability. Only POU devices that have been independently certified in accordance with ANSI NSF standards can be used as part of a compliance strategy. Several nonprofit organizations in the U.S. independently certify POU devices or verify their removal capabilities, including NSF International, Underwriters Laboratories, and the Water Quality Association. Household water treatment systems are applicable for regulatory compliance in very small communities of less than 250 people. POE devices can be a cost-effective alternative for chemical removal in communities of less than 100 homes. EPA has developed a cost estimating tool for POE treatment units with guidance at the website link shown here. The U.S. EPA Test and Evaluation Facility in Cincinnati, Ohio is a multifaceted research facility with bench, pilot, and full-scale environmental systems. The high bay supports a point-of-entry test station supporting relatively high flow rates and continuous monitoring of several water quality parameters. On slide 14, since the late 1990s, EPA has been testing full-scale bag and cartridge filters, ceramic and RO membranes, and absorptive media for removal of chemical contaminants. The T&E facility also has a point-of-use test station with 2 kitchen sinks and 5 point-of-use faucets and continuous monitoring of water quality parameters. On slide 16, Cincinnati tap water is dechlorinated and deionized for use as a point-of-use test water. Test water is then recreated based on the desired experimental water quality and contaminants of concern. Automated sensors are capable of tracking and data logging flow rates and water quality parameters throughout the POU research studies. Point of entry study number 1 was conducted on composite cartridge filters with UV lamps. EPA and Harmsco Filtration Products developed a Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, or CRADA, to study the household water system shown here. Harmsco is based in Florida, where source and tap waters typically have a yellow tinge. This 15-gallon per minute household filter is capable of removing the yellow color, inactivating pathogens, and improving the taste of drinking water in the home. The composite cartridge filter media is constructed of an antimicrobial pleated 20-micron outer filter, an activated carbon extrusion, and an antimicrobial pleated inner filter with a nominal pore size of 2 microns. Filtered water is then disinfected with low-pressure UV lamps. The composite cartridge system demonstrates removal of turbidity and cryptosized particles. For influent turbidity levels between 1 and 3 NTU, the effluent quality did not deteriorate due to the dirty condition of the filter and high feedwater turbidity. However, the head loss pressure increased rapidly, indicating the need for low feedwater turbidities. The system showed excellent removal of chlorine, trihalomethanes, and diazinon, and insecticide, and adequate removal of MTB and haloacetic acids. The extruded carbon was blended with ferric hydroxide for arsenic removal with negligible results. Under lessons learned, these studies were focused on the removal of cryptosporidium under the long-term 2 enhanced surface water treatment rule. Now that the focus has shifted to virus removal under the groundwater rule, the UV lamp intensity needs to be upgraded to target UV-resistant viruses such as adenovirus. On slide 19, in POU study number 2, EPA and NSF studied the reduction of chemical contaminants in off-the-shelf reverse osmosis and carbon units. Experimental testing of multiple lots of multi-stage kitchen sink systems was completed at NSF in Ann Arbor, Michigan. After preconditioned service periods, RO membrane components were studied first without sediment or carbon filters. Individual chemicals were studied over 6 accumulator tank fill periods. Post-membrane carbon filters were challenged separately. Carbon filters were conditioned with water containing 300 parts per billion of chloroform to simulate loading halfway through the lifespan. Chemical reductions were 99% for most chemicals with RO plus carbon combination. However, some units showed challenged chemicals in their effluents. Chemical exposure did not cause membrane or seal degradation. In POU study number 3, EPA Region 7 specified and deployed point-of-use devices in homes with contaminated private wells in 4 mine waste areas of Washington County, Missouri. Purged and unpurged water samples were collected from 27 out of 348 homes with contaminated well water. Results showed that 19 homes, 70% of the 27 homes, had lead concentrations above the action level of 15 micrograms per liter. This may be difficult to read, but a decision tree was prepared to determine which point-of-use device was applicable and how to maintain the point-of-use device based on well water quality. If the homes with private wells had low line pressure, an RO permeate pump and a booster pump were installed to speed up the treatment time and to make more drinking water readily available to the household. On slide 23, a cost analysis of treatment options in 2010 compared the cost of existing bottled water delivery to the installation of household treatment devices. Over a 2-year period, household treatment devices were less expensive than the delivery of bottled water regardless of treatment technology. The modified carbon absorption units in all 19 households decreased the concentration of lead in the well water to less than the action level of 15 micrograms per liter. Absorptive cartridges are being replaced every 6 months. Residents were okay with the taste of the treated water coming from the POU faucet. The high temperature of the treated water coming from the accumulator tanks for both absorption and RO systems caused residents to store pitchers of cold treated water in the refrigerator. Reverse osmosis units were installed in 11 households and are reducing lead, cadmium, barium, and various other contaminants below the regulatory limits. Sediment and carbon filters are being replaced every 6 months. RO membranes have not been replaced but will be replaced after failure or every 3 years. Residents were not comfortable with sanitizing the RO system annually or replacing RO system cartridges and tubing on a regular basis. Households complained about the taste of the demineralized water and the complexity of RO operation and maintenance. On slide 26, high levels of arsenic in tube wells is a major health concern for millions of people in developing countries. In POU study number 4, the EPA Test and Evaluation Facility was chosen by the National Academy of Engineers to study arsenic removal from 15 point-of-use devices to determine the winners of the $1 million Granger Challenge. The winning systems had to be affordable, reliable, easy to use and maintain, socially acceptable, and environmentally friendly. A pour-through water filter that uses locally available filter media won the gold medal. A small community absorption and filtration system won the silver medal, and a powder for particle removal and disinfection won the bronze medal. As mentioned earlier, POU devices may not be used to achieve compliance with an MCL or treatment technique for a microbial contaminant or an indicator of a microbial contaminant. So what standards apply to POU devices for microbial pathogen removal? The EPA Guide Standard and NSF Protocol P231 for microbiological purifiers specify bacteria, virus, and cyst removal requirements. The test and evaluation facility has a biosafety level 2 lab for microbial pathogen studies that is under negative pressure to keep microorganisms out of adjacent rooms. Biosafety level 2 lab equipment include a fume hood, water bath, refrigerator and freezer for sample storage, centrifuge, microscope, humidimeter, autoclave, and other equipment for analysis of microbial pathogens. The remaining studies in this presentation focus on the pathogen removal capabilities of various point-of-view use devices. POU study number 5 provided a comparison of a reverse osmosis system and 2 charged media systems for pathogen removal. So what is charged media? In the first case, it is a proprietary extruded carbon filter that has been modified for pathogen removal. The pleated pre-filter removes coarse particles, and the extruded carbon filter has a thermoplastic binder, a cationic polymer, a cationic silver complex, and pH-altering material. In the second case, charged media is a proprietary molded carbon block that has been modified for pathogen removal. The pleated pre-filter removes coarse particles, and the molded carbon block is comprised of insoluble inorganic matter with a high isoelectric point, a low melt index binder, and a silver compound to suppress bacterial growth if used for an extended period of time. For comparison with the charged media filters, a 3-stage RO system comprised of a carbon pre-filter for coarse particle removal, an RO membrane for removal of fine particles, chemicals, and pathogens, and a carbon post-filter for removal of odors and for improved taste was included in this study. The experimental methodology shown here provides some background on how pathogens and surrogates are injected and sampled over time during sampling events. The sampling unit on the right contains a 0.45 micron filter that traps 3 micron polystyrene latex beads for analysis. All 3 POU devices demonstrated complete removal of bacteria, protozoa, and viruses as tested, and favorably met requirements of microbiological purifiers. The RO system performed better than charged media in removing PSL beads, a surrogate for Cryptosporidium 006. What are microbial surrogates? Surrogate organisms are harmless microbes with the correlated survival and growth parameters of a specific pathogen, in this case, Cryptosporidium. By comparing crypto and surrogate results, it was found that Bacillus subtilis demonstrated better potential as a surrogate for Cryptosporidium in charged media systems than polystyrene latex beads. The complexity and cost of analysis was also lower for Bacillus subtilis. On slide 38, in POU study number 6, EPA conducted long-term studies on 2 off-the-shelf 5-stage reverse osmosis units. The RO systems were operated to simulate start-stop sequences for typical household tap water usage. Both RO systems demonstrated excellent performance in removing microbial contaminants over 2 years of operation. Both RO units had complete removal of crypto-sized beads for up to 670 days, and either complete or nearly complete removal of E. coli, Bacillus subtilis, and MS2 for up to 720 days. On slide 39, in POU study number 7, the hollow fiber polyether sulfone ultrafiltration membrane module was studied for removal of pathogens and turbidity. Turbidity tests were performed with feedwater turbidities of 2, 5, and 10 NTU. 3 protozoa tests, 3 bacteria tests, and 3 virus tests were performed on dechlorinated tap water with feeds, E. coli, and MS2 bacteriophage. Membrane-based filters require cleaning on a periodic basis depending on the source water quality. The UF system was backflushed when there was a 25% drop in filtrate flow rate. The clean-in-place mode was employed with sodium hydroxide and chlorine chemicals when backflushing was no longer an effective cleaning method. So what is flux? Flux expresses the rate at which water permeates a membrane or filter, or how quickly the clean water comes out of the filter. Filtrate flux is the flow of product water divided by the surface area of the membrane in gallons per square foot per day at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The specific flux or permeability refers to the filtrate flux that has been normalized for transmembrane pressure and temperature. These membrane evaluation parameters are measured to normalize membrane performance during POU experimental test runs. The performance of the UF membrane increased with increasing turbidity level. The UF system produced water with a turbidity level of less than 0.18 NTU. 5 of the 6 turbidity runs produced effluent water with an average turbidity of less than 0.15 NTU. The surface water treatment rule requires at least 95% of the samples per month to be less than 0.15 NTU. UF system also removed 98% of the particles in the crypto size range of 2 to 5 microns. In these POU experimental test runs, the UF system demonstrated complete removal of crypto-sized 3 micron beads, 5 log removal of E. coli, and 6 log removal of MS2 bacteriophage. On slide 44, in POU study number 8, EPA evaluated the microbial removal capabilities of household microbiological purifier. The Purette pour-through device was designed for use in India, developing and emerging market countries, and for emergency response in the U.S. The top chamber has a 9-liter capacity with a bag filter for removal of sediment that traps 90% of the particles greater than 10 microns in diameter. The bag filter is cleaned by backwashing the filter under a faucet to remove accumulated dirt. The system superchlorinates water and scavenges residual chlorine and chlorinated byproducts using activated carbon. When the chlorine disinfectant tablet completely dissolves, the system shuts down automatically until all 3 consumables, the sediment bag filter, the chlorine tablet, and the carbon cartridge, are replaced at the same time. New models like the Purette Excella now have microfiber mesh filters in the top chamber and microcharge membranes in the collection chamber to physically remove protozoans like Crypto and Giardia. On slide 45, the study found complete disinfection of E. coli and MS2 over the design life of the product. The carbon filter removed 98% of chlorine after disinfection. No disinfection byproducts were detected in the treated water, but additional tests using a source water with natural organic matter are recommended to evaluate DBP control. Links to EPA reports, journal articles, and conference proceeding papers are listed for further information on specific details of these research studies. EPA would like to recognize and thank the collaborative efforts of everyone listed in the acknowledgments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Craig. And the slides will be available so everybody can look at those links with the slides that will be sent out. So thank you, Greg, for your presentation. And as we move to the next set of slides, Cynthia's slides, I'll take a little bit more bookkeeping things to take care of here. First is that, again, if you have any questions during the talks, feel free to put them in the questions box. We'll then have them ready for after Cynthia's talk for the speakers. And secondly, if you've missed the poll at the beginning of the webinar, you can put in the number of people in your room in the questions box. That'll help us count how many people are listening, and it'll help us with justifying this webinar. And also, if there's somebody who needs the continuing education credit hour in that room, we need to know who that is. So I believe we're ready with Cynthia's slides, so I'll introduce her. Cynthia Clevens comes from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. She's a chemical engineer in the environmental field with half of that in the drinking water treatment program. She joined the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Drinking Water and Groundwater Bureau in 2005 to assist small public water systems and private wells with water treatment for arsenic, radionuclides, and disinfection byproducts. Prior to that, she worked in the consulting industry. She also served as the technical advisor for EPA's arsenic demonstration program and is a member of the NSF Joint Committee for Drinking Water Treatment Units. So with that, I'll hand over the floor to Cynthia.
Thank you, Tom. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be talking about some point of entry case studies in New Hampshire. I'll cover a little bit about our point of use rules, which we call decentralized treatment, and be able to cover some pros and cons that we've learned over the last few years using the point of use, and then why this option really has helped our small systems with compliance. First, little background, we have our share of chronic contaminants in New Hampshire. In fact, the U.S. Geological Survey data says that we have about a 1 in 5 probability of having arsenic at 10 or above in our bedrock wells. In terms of public water systems, we started when the new arsenic rule was implemented in 2006 with about 200 public water systems above the standard. And I'm just showing here, the years that it took us to bring this down. And currently we have in and out about 10 systems or so still with violations for various reasons, either coming on new or managing their treatment systems that they go above the standard. In addition to arsenic, we also have other chronic contaminants like uranium, gross alpha, radium, and fluoride that are well suited for point of use treatment depending on the situation. For arsenic in particular, I'm just showing the different technologies we've used. Most of those point of entry or centralized treatment, but about 10 or 11% of our systems have used point of entry for arsenic. And then we also have a couple community systems doing uranium treatment as point of use. Why do we like point of use? Well, for small businesses in particular, it has been very useful to reduce the amount of water to be treated and the cost, obviously, for treatment. For small community systems, especially in a rural state like New Hampshire, we have no place to do an on-site discharge. So the point of use option sometimes is the only option other than installing a new well or to be able to blend. So for very small community systems, often the point of use might be the only option for compliance. We've developed some fact sheets about on-site disposal for backwashes into septic systems, which we only allow discharge to a septic system if it's a community septic, like for a school that would have all the water treated for that school to be discharged into a single septic. But most of the community systems, as you probably are aware, would have individual septic systems, so that option was not available, making centralized treatment not feasible. So I've listed some definitions that we've used. Point of use and point of entry are the same definitions as federal. Point of use for a single tap in a home. Point of entry, a treatment device for the entire home or a building. And then we have one that we call dual plumbing, which we've used in a few instances, such as schools and small businesses, where the water system has installed a separate set of plumbing for potable uses only. So we've classified that as a dual plumbing system. Our regulations for decentralized treatment, is our EMV DW 723. They're online for any other states that want to review them. Essentially, the requirements are that central treatment or blending is not feasible. Based on the federal requirements, in our state rules, we also have that its point of use will not be allowed for acute contaminants such as bacteria, nitrate, and of course for volatile contaminants like VOCs. The other requirement that we have in our rules is that each of the users, for example, in the community system, there needs to be written acceptance, a letter from each of the homeowners that accepts the use of point of use technology as a compliance means to meet the drinking water standards. And what we've done is that we have two letters. One that is an agreement. This is a model letter that we've used. They agree to and understand that they're using a point of use device, and that all water for consumption should come from that faucet. And the second letter, I don't have model here, but the second letter is the intent to transfer the point of use agreement when they sell their home, so that's included in their deed to a new homeowner. And then finally, again, based on federal requirements, that the water system owner is responsible for the operation and maintenance. For non-community systems, non-transient non-community, we require that they have postings at each of the sinks. For example, that it would say non-potable for washing only, use treated water for consumption in the break room kitchen sink, or whichever is the one that has the point of use device. We require annual sampling for each point of use device for the community systems, and quarterly sampling for non-transient non-communities. And then there's also an education requirement in the rules that says that they will do an annual notice, for example, with the CCR for a community system, or we'll have a posting in a central bulletin board, say at a daycare or a school, where information is provided that the company or the school has elected to use point of use as a compliance for this standard. When there are violations, we have in our rules that the public notice has to be given to the customer with the exceedance, and correction is required by 7 days and retesting by another 7 days. So essentially it's a 2-week window to correct the unit and retest. And if we have repeated violations, we have in the rules that the state can rescind approval if there's recurring violations. And we have had some cases like that we've had to go to administrative order for repeated violations. So now to cover a few case studies, I want to share a couple community systems. One is with 15 homes for arsenic. Another one is a uranium fluoride point of use in Tamworth. Another one will be the dual plumbing example, which is an auto dealership in Bow. And then finally, one with 12 homes, a small system in Stratham, New Hampshire. So the Meeting House Senior Living Condominiums in Pembroke, New Hampshire has 15 homes. Their raw water arsenic was about 40. And they installed this very early on in May 2006, and have really had a great compliance history. Their maintenance, no problems that we've heard of at all, or violations. They have the dual cartridges at each kitchen sink. They sample once a year. It's been a great model for that. The second one is a reverse osmosis system, point of use, that is treating both uranium and fluoride at a system called Chicora Meadows in Tamworth, New Hampshire. There are 21 homes there. The fluoride is close to 5 ppm, and uranium is between 28 to 58 or so parts per billion. They installed in 2007. They take their annual samples. They've missed a couple samples, but other than that, have been okay. They corrected that oversight, and they've had the same operator as well, which is helpful. So it's been a good installation. The next one is a pretty complicated one. It's at an auto dealership, a Honda dealership. They have about 40 employees. The total well flow is about 15 gallons per minute, and we split off a side stream for drinking water of about 3 gallons per minute for potable. And from that side stream, they are feeding 5 drinking water locations that are accessible for the employee break rooms and the public, where they serve coffee and water. And what they have, there's many contaminants in this water, is iron, manganese, MTBE, radon, and arsenic. And so all the flow is treated by cation exchange, aeration for the radon, and carbon for MTBE. And then the potable line has some redundant systems. It has a reverse osmosis. They have an activated alumina cartridge as a redundant treatment, and then they have a calcite and a carbon cartridge after the RO, just to remineralize the water and give it some taste back. And we do quarterly sampling at this system. Here's some pictures of the treatment room, where the centralized treatment, where they have the aerator, the carbon, and the cation softener. And then on the side, I'm not sure if you see this. This is the potable line, where we have the RO, the activated alumina, and the calcite and the carbon filters. And what the sinks look like are shown here. They have a non-drinking water for the main sink, and the drinking water tap labeled on the side here for the public and employees. And under the sink, it's pretty clean. Looks like that. And finally, a small system, a community system in Stratham. Only 12 homes. The reason we regulate them as a public water system, or we did regulate them as a public water system, was because the occupancy brought them over 25 people. And they had 25 parts per billion or so of arsenic, and then some iron and hardness as well in the raw water. But their pump house was in pretty bad condition. It really wasn't large enough to house central treatment. So because of the size, we accepted point of use as an option. However, each of the homeowners here had different tolerances or different preferences, really. So our rules also allow that they can install additional equipment if they desire, above the minimum, if they wanted to do some secondary treatment in addition to the main contaminant. So that worked for a while until some internal politics, I think, from the homeowners association and within the owners, that they kept getting violations. Sample was, missing a sample here and there, or different homes weren't doing the maintenance that they had committed to, and so that just fell apart finally. That they all agreed to invest in private wells, and had legal agreements between the homes in order to, because the private well setbacks overlapped their properties. And so they had to have legal agreements. And finally, in 2014, they were able to abandon the community well, filled it in. We abandoned the pump house, and now they're all served by private wells. Just on costs a little bit, anywhere from, for the point of use devices for arsenic or even reverse osmosis online, range anywhere from $150 to about $1,200 per unit is what we're finding. We recommend, of course, that any unit that is purchased be NSF certified for the particular contaminant. Point of entry devices in New Hampshire range from about $1,500 to about $3,000 per unit. If they have several combinations, then we have seen costs up to $10,000 or so for a single home treatment system. It can get pretty expensive. And then for dual plumbing, rule of thumb has been about $1,000 per gallon per minute. So say a 10-gallon per minute well would come in about $10,000 for capital costs. Problems that we've had with these rules, number one, just to get everyone to agree for the initial letters is not as easy as it should seem. You know, not everybody comes to the homeowner meetings, different reasons, but just to get that those individual commitment letters sometimes takes quite a while, and enforcement from us in order to push the process along. Another problem is that because we, you know, depending on the number of units, as I showed, there's 15 homes, 21 homes. That's our largest system is the point of view system is 21 homes, but that means that we have 21 sampling sites in the water system. So it's a monitoring hassle for the additional sampling sites. So our bureau is not so happy with the additional paperwork that needs to be prepared for the decentralized units. Of course, additional sampling effort by the operator. People, you know, generally one trip to pick up the samples is not enough, so they get half the samples and then have to come back multiple times. So the operators are not too fond of this technology either. And then a few systems we have had to go all the way to administrative order to address multiple violations or requiring an alternate solution like the private wells that were installed in Stratum. Advantages for the small systems are definitely much lower capital costs and operating costs even. The efficiency that we can achieve by just treating the potable water in each home rather than treating all the water that's used is significant for a small system, especially here in New Hampshire. Our water system sometimes can use 8 times more water in the summer months just from irrigation. And so treatment of all that, those higher uses for irrigation puts a high cost on the treatment maintenance. Specifically for arsenic, where our disposal, one option is to do the throwaway media. That can cost over $10,000 a year in maintenance costs, even $30,000. Just the costs escalate very quickly for centralized treatment for certain types of medias. There are lots of equipment options and price ranges, so I think that's a huge advantage for systems to choose and compare. And then a lot of times it has been the only option, as I mentioned earlier, for some communities where there is no on-site disposal. For example, fluoride treatment, we cannot keep up with the regeneration frequency for activated alumina on a centralized basis, you would have to regenerate every 6 months or so, and that is just not feasible at a community system with no disposal location. That's it for any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Cynthia. And so now we'll go into a question period. We have a lot of questions for the speakers, and I'll start out with questions for Craig Patterson. We have about 10 minutes to the hour. We'll probably go past that if people can hang on, but we understand if you have to leave on the hour. So the first question for Craig Patterson is, are you not concerned, or are you concerned that dechlorination by using activated carbon will render the potable water subject to pathogen growth?
Yeah, anytime you're dechlorinating water, you're going to remove the chlorine residual disinfectant. However, with the point-of-use devices in the home, typically the water is just stored in an accumulator tank for a short period of time before it's actually used. So due to the turnover rate and having it at the faucet itself, I'm not too concerned about pathogens growing after it's been dechlorinated.
Okay, here's another one. Craig, for RO units, how do you deal with the reject water?
Yeah, the RO, it's true with any of these membrane systems, they're going to have a reject water or concentrate that typically goes into the wastewater line, that typically goes to a septic system or a sewer.
Okay. And what type of filter media or design is best able to withstand fouling or loss of flow by suspended solvent?
All right, I think when you design a household system, you have to look at pre-filtration as a way to prevent fouling of tighter membranes. And when I say that, you need to actually put a sacrificial pre-filter in line with some of these RO systems or tighter membranes, so that suspended solids won't clog the tighter RO membranes and have to be replaced more often. So these are low-cost pre-filters that can be replaced on a regular basis to prevent that more expensive membranes from fouling.
Okay, great. And here's a question for Cynthia. Are there any NSF ANSI certified POU systems for uranium removal?
I would say the reverse osmosis systems, if they're certified for NSF 58, for reverse osmosis, those would be acceptable for uranium removal. I don't believe they're certified specifically for uranium, but as long as they're certified under 58, that would be accepted here.
Okay. Here's another question for you, Cynthia. Do you require each home on POU to be sampled? And how is the replacement of the devices determined? Is there some MCL exceedance or other trigger?
Yes, each of the homes must be, each of the POU units must be sampled. And how is the replacement triggered? If it fails, it would have to be corrected. We don't say that they have to replace it, but they have to implement the correction within the 2-week period, within the 14 days that the rule requires.
Okay, Cynthia, here's one. We've received a couple along these lines. Why are the sampling requirements for non-transient, non-community water systems quarterly more stringent than sampling requirements for community water systems annual?
Yeah, and actually in the rule it says annual for all of them, but we have requested increase to quarterly on the belief that there's more people using the single device than at a single home.
Okay. Here's one for Craig. What pore exclusion size is needed to remove protozoan cysts?
Typically, it's 0.2 micron, or the crypto size range is really from 2 to 5 microns. So if you have like a 1 micron absolute or filter, you would be probably removing the cysts, whether they're Giardia or crypto.
Yeah, here's one for Cynthia. I think this needs to just be clarified. Here's a clarification question. You said that state requires that all POU, POE devices are NSF certified. Do you accept certification from ANSI or other certification bodies such as UL, WQA?
Yes, yes, we do. Anything that meets the ANSI standard, yes.
Okay, great. Here's one for you, Cynthia. Are the annual samples required to be collected in the same month, or can they be spread out across the year, i.e. 1 or 2 homes sampled per month for X number of months?
They are scheduled for a quarter of the year, so they have 3 months to collect the total number of samples.
Okay, and so they can be spread out over those 3 months?
Exactly, yes.
Here's one for you, Cynthia. I'm interested in using POU device for THM's HAAs. Public water systems in our state are all required to chlorinate first. Any experience, I guess this could also go to Craig, studies done by EPA. Any guidance to assist systems to choose compliant POU devices? So Craig, you want to start with that one?
Well, yeah, the carbon block charge media systems, any kind of activated carbon systems would be good at THM and HAA removal.
Okay. So do you have any experience with that, Cynthia?
We don't have any POUs for THMs, no.
I'm sorry, I was on mute for a second there. I'm sorry. So this one's for you, Cynthia. What types of units were used for the POU arsenic absorption in the senior living condominiums? And the second question is, did the POU for uranium and fluoride in the Kotura Meadows consist only of RO?
Yes, the type of media for the meeting house system was one of the adsorptive media, an iron-based adsorptive media. And the second question, it was an RO unit for both the uranium and the fluoride, and that's it. There wasn't an additional treatment.
Great, thanks. Okay, here's one for Craig. For RO POUs, is the RO water stabilized as part of the POU or partially blended in the POU? And the gist is that RO water would be corrosive to household plumbing, possibly contributing to lead leaching from pipe solder, etc.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, if it's point of use, it's going to be really close to the sink. So yeah, there could be some, lead in the fixtures or something like that. Typically, these RO systems have post filters, carbon filters that improve the taste of the water. The demineralization does make it aggressive. I believe there actually are cartridges that you can add on that actually mineralize the water after it's after the RO membrane.
Okay, and here's one for Cynthia. Are there state requirements for the use of UV lights or filtration POU or POE devices in water systems that already meet drinking water standards? These devices Oh, go ahead. The last sentence is these devices would only be used to improve existing water quality.
We do not require UV disinfection after the point of use, no.
Okay. Here's one again for Cynthia, for you. For New Hampshire, how do POE users decide to change absorption media? Water quality monitoring or just volume of water treated per manufacturer guideline?
It could be either, and the state doesn't dictate that. We judge, we get their compliance sample, and if it's above the standard, then with that single sample, then they would get a violation. But we don't tell them when to change the media, so they could choose to do either one, by volume proactively, or wait for the sample to be above.
Okay, and here's one. Has New Hampshire considered statistical sampling? Example: 25% compliance 25% per compliance period for POU with high numbers of sample sites.
We have discussed it, but do not like that at all, and so we insist that all of the units need to be sampled at least once a year, and that's the reason that we limit POU as a technology for systems up to maybe 25 home services. We've had higher, considered up to maybe 50, but we have not approved any higher than 21 was the highest, the Chicora Meadows one so far.
Okay, here's one for Craig Patterson. Although utility, capital, and other costs may be low for POE devices, those costs go to the homeowner. It seems that per volume of water treated cost for disposable media use must be higher at the POE scale than at the community scale. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the case. The cost of that absorbed by the homeowner for the POE devices.
Okay. And the unit cost per treatment is higher with POU as opposed to a centralized system.
Oh, yeah, that's true too.
Okay. Cynthia, here's a question for you. You mentioned that centralized systems have problems with disposal. What is the responsibility for the homeowner? Is the public water system responsible for taking back used filters for disposal?
Yes, the public water system is responsible for the maintenance of the POU units.
Okay. A lot of questions popping in here, so give me a second as I catch up. Here's one question for Cynthia. Why go to treatment when alternative groundwater sources that are free of contaminants are available potentially?
And we do only recommend treatment as the last alternative, but often there is no other alternative other than treatment. And so permitting a new well in New Hampshire is a significant thing as well. So, and with the occurrence of arsenic, you're not likely to. The odds of coming up with additional contaminants is pretty high anyway. But blending is definitely preferred with existing sources. Blending would be preferred before treatment is used.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Here's one for Craig. Have you come across any issues with activated carbon leaching trace metals?
Actually, I haven't. I could elaborate on the pathogens being leached from carbon, with warm water and some of those issues. But if if there is a modified carbon for metal removal, on a inline faucet, it lasts for possibly 1,000 gallons and has to be replaced once the capacity is reached. So yeah, these have been tested and do their job.
Okay, here's one for Cynthia. Does the violation go to the water system or the homeowner?
The violation goes to the water system.
Okay, and another one for Cynthia. Do you recommend dual tank point of entry systems for arsenic?
No. It's a customer preference, but the cost of replacing the media for treating the whole house versus point of use doesn't seem to warrant really the whole house treatment versus just a single cartridge at the kitchen sink.
All right, thanks, Cynthia. Here's a very specific question that you might be able to address, Cynthia. If you miss a quarterly sample for arsenic, does the next quarter's sample count for the quarter missed, or is it just the required quarter's sample?
I believe we have to do a makeup sample right away, and probably the following. So this would be for a system on quarterly sampling. I think they have to do a makeup sample and the additional quarter.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Going through, let's see. Okay, here's one question. Here's the question for Cynthia. For New Hampshire DES, under the New Hampshire Arsenic Treatment Technologies, what is the difference between point-of-use adsorption and new adsorption media?
The difference that I listed on the slide was just systems using point-of-use adsorption cartridges, and the new adsorption media line was centralized adsorption. But the media itself is the same. It's whether it was in a cartridge and point of use or in centralized treatment.
Okay, great. In New Hampshire DES, Cynthia, for dual plumbing, do you have color requirements for that or identification requirements for potable and non-potable water?
It does need to be labeled, but we have not asked for different colors, but that's a great idea.
Okay. I just should note it's 3:05, so if you have to leave, we understand. We'll take a few more minutes to answer some more questions. But if you do leave, thank you for attending, and our next webinar will be on disinfection byproducts, regulations, and solutions. So please take a look at our website and please attend if you can. So back to the questions. Here's a question for Cynthia. Has 100% agreement by customers required pose any problems to New Hampshire?
Yes, it has. It's difficult to get everybody on board, and we have had to keep our enforcement correspondents coming to the system in order to push everybody to come to a solution to get on board. So yes, it is one of the hassles of point of use.
Okay, going through a number of these we've covered already to one extent or another. So here's a question for Craig. What research is EPA doing on handling of waste and disposal for treatment systems?
Well, I know they've done some, TCLP studies on some of the media and from these treatment systems. I think bigger issues are with the radioactive contaminants. But for the most part, the trace levels that are being removed in these filters mean that they can be landfill disposed. So that seems to be a majority of the point-of-use systems. Spent media.
Okay, here's one for Cynthia. Was there a different aquifer, I guess this is with regard to one of your slides, was there a different aquifer than that the private homes went to, or was it the same aquifer, same concerns as the community well, but at a private level? And are private wells overseen by the state or local government?
Yeah, no, for the Stratum example, they installed private wells that are not regulated by the state, and they would be probably in the same aquifer. So those point of use and point of entry systems that they had, I hope, are being used for their private wells because they probably also have arsenic.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. Let's see. A number of questions we've answered to a certain extent. Also, a number of the questions ask us about brand names of systems, which we are also always very reluctant to mention from the government because it assumes that we are promoting that brand. So unfortunately, we can't answer those questions. I'm going down the list here. All right. Okay, this one's for Cynthia. Does New Hampshire ever inspect the POU point of entry devices during sanitary surveys?
Yes, not all of them, but a typical one. So we visit every non-transient system every 3 years, and that would include inspecting one of the typical devices.
Great. Here's another one. Do manufacturers provide volume-treated guidelines based on actual site-specific water quality, or is it usually just the generic value for the POU/POE technology?
If that's for me, could you repeat the question? I'm not sure I understood. Sorry.
Sure. I think it's actually kind of more of an NSF question, so Cynthia, you might be able to handle this one real well. Do manufacturers provide volume-treated guidelines based on actual site-specific water quality, or is it usually more of a generic value for a standard water test?
The certification is based on a generic test water, not on the specific water quality for where the unit is purchased.
Right. Okay, here's one about private wells. What happens in houses that you have their own well? Do their water get tested? Folks
on private wells do not have their water tested, are not required to have their water tested in New Hampshire, and they're not regulated by the state. Okay, and let's see, we're down to the last couple that either haven't been asked or, let's see. Okay, we can't say manufacturer names. Or we are reluctant to. Okay, here's one for you, Cynthia. Are there any rainwater collection systems based on source water POU systems in New Hampshire that DES has permitted or approved? We have one rainwater system, yes, that is Star Island in Rye, New Hampshire. They actually are permitted as a surface water and are treating seawater as one of their sources. They also bring in purchase water and bring it by boat to the island. And then their third source is a rainwater collection system that is being treated to surface water standards.
Okay, great, Cynthia. And last question for you, Cynthia. EPA interprets human use to include water used for washing hands. Are POU systems required in bathrooms?
They are not required in bathrooms, no.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for all the questions. I'm sorry we didn't get through them all, but thank you for your very much engagement to our audience. Thank you for attending. It's been a very highly attended webinar, and we appreciate your efforts to tuning in. And I also would like to appreciate our send appreciations to our two speakers, Cynthia Clevens from New Hampshire and Craig Patterson from the EPA here in Cincinnati. So thank you so much for attending. And don't forget about next month's webinar on April 26th on disinfection byproducts, regulations, and solutions. So with that, again, thank you to all, and we'll close this webinar.